Has suffered yet another legal blow in its COVID-19 battle. The Gauteng High Court in Pretoria has ordered that any person who's tested positive for coronavirus can't be forced to quarantine or be isolated at a state facility if that person is able to successfully self-quarantine. It follows another judgment which found that the country's level 3 and level 4 regulations are unconstitutional. Let's discuss this further. We're joined by Judge Bernard Ngoepe, who's now the country's Tax Ombudsman. Good evening, Judge Ngoepe. It's a pleasure to have you on News at Prime tonight. Firstly, these regulations, these court judgments have big implications for how the state can implement some of its own regulations where COVID-19 is concerned. When it comes to the soundness of those judgments, I know often judges don't like to weigh in or make comment on the work of their colleagues, but do you think that these legal arguments are sound and valid?
Well, you are right to say that as a retired judge, I would be careful not to comment on the merits of a judgment that may very well be tested in another court. But we are living under unusual circumstances, and appropriate comments will do no harm. We are literally dealing with issues of life and death. And by the way, the second judgment that you're talking about with regard to enforced quarantine, I haven't read that one.
Sure.
I've read the other one by Judge Davis, and having read it, I appreciate that the judge was dealing with a very difficult case. But having read it, I am of the view that it might be useful to have a second opinion on that particular judgment, not least because it has huge implications. My concern also is that it might impact negatively on the people's morale of feeling obliged to observe the regulations. And yet, there's a lot at stake. And then the other thing that concerns me is that, yes, in his judgment, the judge refers to yet another judgment which took a different direction, albeit in relation to a different regulation. And then the learned judge says they are different. He distinguishes between the two cases. But really, one wonders to what extent are they that fundamentally different? So the important thing, therefore, is that as the judgment stands, it will be worth looking at by another court. We must remember, Cathy, that we are human. All these regulations are made by human beings, not by courts. They cannot be perfect. Are we going to keep on wanting to have perfect regulations while people are there in the meantime? Of course you'll never have perfect regulations. You'll never have regulations which are going to be acceptable to everybody. A great deal of compromise must come from people. They must know that they are defending something that is pretty precious, and that is human life.
Sure. Let's take a look at part of what is being invoked in Judge Davis's finding. He says that some of the regulations impede on people's constitutional rights, and therefore the minister must republish and amend and gazette them in line with the Bill of Rights.
There is no way that in dealing with a situation like this, you may not restrict some of the constitutional rights. Otherwise, it would make no sense. We might just also not have any state of disaster management. What is required is a very careful and informed balancing of issues at stake. You can't have a perfect situation where you contend to keep this virus at bay, but at the same time, life continues as usual. That is impossible. So I think that the fundamental thing that we must all appreciate and accept is that in a situation like this, there's got to be some compromise, and we must be careful in striking that kind of compromise. But you will never have perfect regulations.
So Judge Ngoepe, are you arguing that in his findings, Judge Davis simply didn't have enough of an appreciation for the circumstance that COVID-19 has thrown not just the government but the entire country into?
Well, first let me say that I appreciate that he had a very difficult case to deal with. But it's not a matter of lack of appreciation. It's a matter of getting... well, it's a matter of whether or not the correct balance was struck. And when you determine the rationality of something, you must do it rationally. And it's not an easy task. Nobody is a King Solomon amongst us. We cannot have a perfect wisdom which will deliver perfect product. So that is why I'm saying that opinions will always differ, and no one must say that whatever they think or do is perfect. And given the importance of this particular case and the implications of it, which may demoralize some people or discourage people from obeying the regulations, even during the 14-day period, it's a matter which I think that more heads should come together to look as to whether or not the balancing was correct.
A huge part of this case rests on that rationality test that you're talking about. And I wonder, I suppose you can speak from the perspective of being a judge and, the ability for one to separate one's own views and one's own biases from the ultimate findings that may end up within the judgments that one delivers.
Yes, you see, we can look at the same set of facts and then come to different conclusions. It's a normal thing, and we must accept that. People are entitled to go to court and say, well, somebody saw this thing wrongly, and I think I want the court to do this. But as we do that, we must understand that in a case like this one, Cathy, there is not going to be a perfect solution that the government can come up with. The fundamental principle here is that we must accept that there's going to be a lot of compromise on the part of many of us. I have some people saying there's a constitutional crisis. There is no constitutional crisis. There's a health crisis. I have some people saying we're living under tyranny. Do they know what tyranny is? They don't know what tyranny is. So I think that people will have different opinions, but we must just accept that we will never pursue normal life as long as this problem is still persisting.
Sure. Why was it important for you to speak publicly on this matter? Because
I'm a South African, and it's an important matter. It's a matter of life and death.
Sure. All right, we're going to leave it there for tonight. Justice